last time on Rettals Pub.
I'm very much an individualist, and that's what anarchy is to me.
Yes.
Is this you don't get to tell me what to do.
Yes.
I am my own king. I am my own master. I am my own president. I am my own preacher. I am my own leader. I'm free as an individual outside, but internally, in order to do that, I have to be the most strictest tyrant internally. Right. I have to make sure that I'm following certain ethics. Now, I get to determine what those ethics are, and I think most people will come to the same conclusion that it has to be this certain thing. But in the end, my concern is these young people who I'm Generation X. You're probably what, millennial? You millennial?
I don't want to be called a millennial. I am,
but you're on the cusp, probably.
Yeah.
So you're on the cusp between Generation X and millennial. So that's not a bad place to be.
Here are your hosts, Nate and Mason.
I'm an elder millennial.
If I'm really, and I hope don't make anybody mad at this. Well, I don't really care if I do or not. If I'm really speaking to, why don't we go to politics now? That's my fault. Sorry. If I'm really speaking to why I believe we're in this situation, it's purely at the feet of the boomers.
Yes,
because
they voted party loyalty.
Well, it's more than that. They've taken the complete freedom that the greatest generation handed them, the generation of World War II, a complete, free, and extremely powerful monetarily or financially, economically system, such as the U.S. in the 50s, in the 60s.
And if you look at it, the spiritual connection of the 50s and the 60s, there was an influx of Eastern mysticism and Eastern philosophy that flooded the United States during the 50s and the 60s.
So what you've got is the boomers came in. They're the kids of the World War II vets and those who went to war and died. But you've got the boomers who have come in, and they're purely consumers, and not in a it's almost, I saw a meme, and it showed a group of a family around the table, and on one hand, on one side of the table, you had the mom and then the two kids and then the father. And the mom was Generation X, one kid was the millennial, one kid was Generation Z, and then the father was the boomer. And it was a dinner table, and the father had pulled all the food to sit in front of him, and he was humongous.
Yeah.
He was like the boss hog.
Yeah.
Those of you who are older will remember Boss Hog. Dukes of Hazzard. He was the boss hog, and the other three were starving.
Mm-hmm. I believe
because the boomers had consumed everything. And look at what BlackRock and Vanguard are the result of the boomers, and they're consuming everything and leaving nothing behind because they don't look. And this is where I tend to lean a certain way politically. That's not anarchism, is because they do what they do without consideration of the people that come from behind them and the people that went before them. It's all about me consuming what I need to consume. Mm-hmm. I want more, I want more, I want more. There is never enough. I want it all, and I don't want to share.
And if you look at that, I'm trying to keep the balance, the spiritual balance there. If you look at that, where we live in a very wooded area. We live in East Texas, right? General area. And you see the boomers come in and strip our forests completely down. Do they replant? No. Mm-hmm. We are seeing on our drive home from work and to work, we're seeing land that is completely raped of wood, and there is no consideration for future generations to replant that, to reforest that raping. The beauty of it.
And here's the thing: even if they reforest it, it's organized, and it takes away the beauty of the disorganization of trees that have just been planted because they've shed their seeds, and it's just a natural growth as opposed to straight lines of making sure these trees are planted a certain way. I'm almost at the point to where I don't think you can divide spirituality from that.
No.
You have to look at the complete consumerist ideals and the gluttonous of the boomers. I mean, I can't, and I'm not saying all boomers are like that, but a large majority of them are. Even those who claim to be on the left, who are pro-human and pro the little man, they're really not.
They're not.
They're only pro the little man just so they can get in office and rape you even further. You know, Generation X, you know, we're kind of the cusp between millennials and that. And so some of us have that lean back to the boomer ideals, and some of us have that lean forward to the millennials. I'm kind of a good mixture of the two in that I think that if you're going to be in government, your first goal should be to take care of the people that you govern.
Well, that was the original intent, right?
Not to rape the land and leave it unmarked, you know, or leave it or mark it to where it's ugly and there's nothing there. I don't believe. Now, I'm not a leftist by any means. I don't think that you should take from one and give to the other. I think that if you really vote good people in, they're going to be there to take care of the people. The problem is that in the U.S. at least, the federal government is so far away from the normal people till they've lost sight. And then you have Nancy Pelosi, who's never had a real job. Joe Biden, who's never had a real job. Some of these guys, and even some of the ones who let's just say on the right. I mean, those two are on the left. Let's look at Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz has had nothing but government jobs.
Yeah.
Now, he's a lawyer. That doesn't make him any better.
But he went from law school straight into clerking for the Supreme Court.
For the Supreme Court. So he's had no real jobs. Now, you have some people like Thomas Massey, who I think was an actual scientist. I can't remember what he studied. The dude is a smart guy. You know, you had Rand Paul, who actually used to be a doctor. You had Ron Paul, who I campaigned for back in the day, who was a doctor. He was. There are a few people that actually care about the people. They care about the people that they represent, but they've gotten so far away from understanding everyday life. I mean, look at them. We were just talking before this about their questioning of TikTok. Most of them are so ignorant.
They're so
and completely disengaged, disconnected from reality, that they're only there to line their own pockets. And if you look at, I'll tell you someone else who I never thought that I would actually enjoy listening to 2 years ago, who has just completely blown my mind recently, and that's Russell Brand. I don't know if you've watched any of his latest stuff.
Russell Brand is, yes.
Go check him out. And while I don't agree with everything he says,
spiritual man.
Yeah. While I don't agree with everything he says politically, I'm getting on that same wavelength, because the more we can decentralize politically and allow your cities to have control. And by cities, I don't mean like Houston. I mean like, you know, Richards, you know, have more control locally. Then you're going to be closer to the people that you're there for, and they know where you live, and they shop in your grocery store. They can come talk to you at any point in time. Whereas if you're in the federal government, you're the rich men north of Richmond. I don't know if you've seen that
Great
video.
Song, by the way.
Yes, go check that guy out if you haven't already. And if you haven't already, you've got your head stuck in the sand somewhere. So go check out. I can't remember his name. Oliver something.
Oliver Lambert?
No.
Lambert?
Anyway, it's the name of the song.
Men north of Richmond.
And he's talking about D.C., where if you look at the amount of wealth that they've garnered because of COVID,
Yep.
And the pharmaceutical companies, you know, Russell Brand points out that we as taxpayers paid for the so-called vaccine, but the Pfizers and these companies that actually quote unquote designed it, and I'm really questioning that understanding, have made billions off of it, and none of that came back to the taxpayers.
No,
none of it. It's all went into their pockets. And if you look at trading, there's a bunch of those senators and Congress or Congress people in general who made changes to their portfolio before the COVID thing started hitting, because they knew that there was going to be some money to be made. And I'm telling you, man, there's nothing but greed. And I don't care if you're on the left side of the spectrum as far as a liberal, or the right side as far as a conservative. Man, we got to get together as a group of people. Because we have to set aside these divisive thought processes and divisive things, and understand that what's keeping us from being back in power, because we're not.
No.
And then I don't know if you've heard this, but rumor has it, and I can't prove it, so I'm not going to say it's true, but rumor has it that there's going to be another lockdown in the next 2 or 3 months.
Which let me jump in. Let me jump in and bring the spirituality out of that. COVID lockdown in 2020, 2021 exploded in the spiritual community. The spiritual community exploded because of those lockdowns. Because, number one, people began to read and watch YouTube, watch TikToks, whatever, and because they weren't going anywhere. They couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shop, couldn't do anything. So what did they do? They began to practice spiritual practices. And within the Christian community, even in of itself, the evangelical movement, greatest news I ever heard, the evangelical movement, because of the lockdowns in 2020, is hemorrhaging saints or hemorrhaging members, because people are in lockdown studying, researching scripture, and finding out what they're being told, what they're being taught is utter bullshit, right? So there is a mass move of deconstruction, or there is a mass move out of evangelicalism to Catholicism and Orthodoxy, because historical Christianity, they weren't taught that, right? So if we go into another lockdown, if what happened in 2020, 2021 is a good standard, then if they try to lock us down, or they attempt to lock us down, or they do, there is a great opportunity to find the kingdom of heaven within and grow spiritually. And when you grow spiritually, then everything within economics, everything within government, socioeconomic issues, there will be a great change.
No, I don't think so.
That's my hope.
Well, that's a good hope. But here's what I think is going to happen. They lock us down. We almost didn't make it out of the last one economically sound. Mm-hmm. They lock us down again. We won't make it out economically sound. Because they've printed trillions of dollars.
Right.
So basically what they're doing, whether it's planned or not, if there is another lockdown, I think it's to completely destroy the currency, and then implement a digital currency such as Bitcoin or that sort of thing that's controlled by the federal government. And let me tell you something, guys. I'm a fan of Bitcoin. Always have been ever since it came out, because of its decentralization. But now you've got the ability for the government to take something that's supposed to be decentralized, and just because you think it's anonymous, Bitcoin is not anonymous. That's not what makes it good. It's actually an open source transaction-based system. So it is currency, it's just digital. And if you have the proper technology, you can actually follow every transaction that anybody has made from their wallet. And that's what makes it so powerful, is that it removes the anonymous. Yeah, there we go. Of those things. Now, my wallet is anonymous, but here's the problem. Federal government destroys the dollar, implements their own digital currency. Now it's no longer anonymous. I can't give you cash and it be anonymous, because there will be no more cash. There will be my wallet that's assigned to Nate, and Mason's wallet that's assigned to Mason. And at that point, they can say, oh, you're not going to take the vaccine? Well, you don't get any money. You don't get to buy food.
Like a social credit score situation.
Oh, it's worse than that. It's the beast. If I were to talk about Christianity, it's the mark of the beast straight up, because they can control buying and selling.
But I see that. I agree with that. However, the focus should not be on the kingdom of nothing. To me, that will happen. That will happen. But that is also an illusion of the kingdom of nothing to keep you distracted.
But it's going to work. It's going to. I mean, look at Christianity.
From your spiritual growth.
Look at Christianity is also that, and it has held a stranglehold. People are belling.
That's because Christianity and government are interlocked with each other.
But here's the problem:
because of the 501c3 bullshit.
If I leave Christianity and go to Orthodoxy because I've questioned Christianity, maybe I'm just perfectly fine there, and I don't care about the digital currency that's going to lock me down to where I can't buy or sell, where I can't live the life that I determine is correct. Mm-hmm. And I get what you're saying, but Joe Biden is not a Christian. no matter what he
no.
proclaims.
No.
So if you're a Christian and I don't like Christians, then I can lock you down so where you can't buy or sell unless I say so. If you're overweight and I think you're fat because you're not eating the right shit, I won't let you buy Pizza Hut because your cholesterol's too high.
Sure.
Because then I can tie it into your medical records and I can say, no, we're not going to let you do that. And this is not conspiracy. This is legit what can happen and what will happen. Because at that point, they will, just like the Richmond of Richmond says, they want all the control. They want to control your thoughts. They want to control your body. They want to control your steps. They want to control all of that. And no amount of deconstructing spirituality is going to help that unless you also deconstruct the idea of government as we know it today. And the only way to do that is to go to anarchism and completely separate yourself from any sort of currency that is based on government.
So where's the hope?
The hope? Where's the hope? Well, I don't think there is any. And by that, I mean, I think it's going to happen. We're going to see a huge crash. And the only way to get out of that is for people to stop participating in the evil that is government. That's the only way. And if they control your currency and control what you can eat and control what you can spend and control how you drive, make you move into the city, because there's no sense in you having a car if you're in the city, and therefore that fixes the environmental problems, that fixes the oil problems, that fixes all these problems that a lot of people are going to be for. The only way, the only hope we have that I see is for people to be strong enough to say, I'm not doing it. I will starve before you make me do that. And I don't think people are capable of doing that.
But in order for that to happen, where's the awakening? How do we get to the awakening?
Well, I mean,
how do we get to that hope?
If you've went through the last lockdown and the way the world has went the last 4 years and you're not awake, you've got some fucking problems.
Spiritually.
It's
spiritually speaking, where's the hope? Is what I'm trying to say. Where's the hope in this? Because we've got people that, because of the lockdowns in 2020, anxiety, depression, and suicide have tripled, right? It's become a pandemic within our society. So it is well.
Excuse my dog, people. That's Peanut. Welcome to the show, Peanut.
Peanut. Me and Peanut have a love and hate relationship. She hears my voice, so she's barking. So with that pandemic exploding like it is, understanding the truth that the rich men north of Richmond is corrupt. What that's doing is that rhetoric is building the anxiety of our listeners, right? So with this being a spiritual podcast, where do we go to bring in the hope? Is what I'm trying to say. How do we instill hope?
So here's
within
this.
Those that are struggling with suicide right now, and with just the rumor of another lockdown coming, is stirring panic and anxiety and depression. So where do we find the hope? Where does that hope come from?
I don't,
because right now, with what's being said, there's more panic than there is hope. So
the only thing that I can think of, and the way I'm looking at this is, I get what you're saying, but the only way that I'm not anxious about it and quite frankly angry about it is because it is what it is. It's going to be what it's going to be.
It is what it is. Yes.
And so the question is whether I can be present and mindful about my current situation. The problem I have is that where I have a problem, and I just repeated myself, is when other people think they can control who I am and what I am. Mm-hmm. And that's not ego. Because what happens is other people's ego want to make you live like they do. So if I believe that the environment should be taken care of, I'm completely okay killing you in order to make that happen. That's that may be a little bit drastic, but let's take it down a notch. Let's not be so drastic. I'm perfectly okay making you get rid of your vehicle, forcing you by gunpoint to do so. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who don't understand what I'm saying, anything that you put into law is enforced by a gun. So just because you're not holding the gun doesn't mean that you're not wielding the gun. So remember that any law that you put into place is enforced by guns. So the answer is you're going to have to be spiritually adept and be able to say, I am going to do what is right.
What about discernment? Instead of be adept.
What I mean by spiritually adept is all of it. I'm using discernment to realize that everything on the fucking mainstream media is fucking lies. Every bit of it. And if you've not figured that out, go watch some stuff on YouTube.
Your head's in a hole.
Yeah. Whether you like Trump or not, this arrest is not a good thing. I'm sorry, it's not. There are some questions as to what it opens up, though. That said, what is the hope? The hope is that you go inside and you begin to realize that you are the answer to your solution.
Yes.
Don't look to Richmond.
No.
The rich man north of Richmond. Don't look to Austin, Texas. Don't look to your state capital or even your city's capital or even your town's courthouse. Look to yourself. Become self-reliant.
Mm-hmm.
Find a group of people that you can be unified with spiritually, politically, economically, mentally. The whole 9 yards.
Find your tribe.
Create your world. Ignore everything else. Learn how to grow your own food, all the way from the vegetables to the cow,
mm-hmm.
to the chicken, to the ducks, to the goats, to everything. Learn how to grow your own vegetables. Learn how to grow everything. Become one. Forget trying to keep up with the Smiths. Don't worry about the Smiths. Let the Smiths do what the Smiths gonna do. Go find your own place. Don't worry about the internet so much, and I'm saying that because I'm the IT guy and I almost can't live without it. But if you have to sacrifice those things in order to be free, in order to be spiritually free, which encompasses the tripartite,
yep.
The body, soul, and mind,
yep.
Right? Because if you're locked down with your body, you can still be free with your mind.
Yes.
But wouldn't it be much better for me to be able to go and worship whoever I wish to worship without any encumbrances whatsoever?
That's true.
To walk down the street without any encumbrances whatsoever? To be able to drive wherever I need to drive without any encumbrances whatsoever?
Yeah.
The hope is, and my wife is often pointing this out to me, especially back when I was an anarchist, pretty much vocally, is like, it sounds so hopeless what you're talking about. And to me, it's not hopeless. I don't see it without hope, because if enough people refuse to participate, that's the question. Are you willing to stand up and do what is hard, the very difficult things where you lose your family, you lose your friends, you lose your conveniences, you lose your ability to go down to Walmart and buy your smokes, or go down to Walmart and buy your cow, your meat, or your vegetables, or your fudge rounds. You go down there and you can go buy that stuff. Are you willing to give that stuff up to really be free? Because I used to not believe that freedom was that. I used to hear people say freedom is not free, and I used to disagree with that, because they were using it in a certain way that you had to be free within the bounds of
community guidelines.
Within community guidelines of whether it's church, whether it's politics, whether it's whatever. I believe it too. I believe that freedom is not free. But it's not because you have to abide by community guidelines. It's because you have to sacrifice everything that is convenient in order to become the greatest version of yourself. And if you're in a community, you have to give yourself to the community. It's in fact, let me see if I can find it real quick. I read a quote this week that was completely awesome. Let me see if I can find it. But it talks about this sort of thing. But in order to be free, we have to give up. And we have to give up on the things that are convenient and put ourselves in a place of pain and suffering. Not pain and suffering as far as like spiritual pain and spiritual suffering, but pain and suffering to where I have to get out and work in the fields. So George Bernard Shaw said this, and it's a long quote, and I'll try to read it correctly. Oh, shut up, Adam.
So long.
Shut up, Mason. This is the true joy in life. The being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one. The being of a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances complaining that the world will not devote itself to you, making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live it, is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle for me, quote unquote. It is a sort of splendid torch which I have got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. How poignant is that? How awesome is that? To understand that my life is not my own. It is the community that now I can choose that community. What I really like about this is at the very beginning, he said the being used for a purpose recognized by yourself. You're recognizing your own purpose. You get to choose your own purpose, your own value, and then you give your entire life to that, and you work hard and you do these things. That to me is a culmination of where I am today, because I have found the purpose that I have chosen, and I'm in the process of choosing to live wholeheartedly that purpose and give my life to the community that I have become a part of through spirituality.
Yeah.
And that's part of this podcast. And there's some other things I have planned for myself outside of the podcast that is still podcast related. But the hope, yeah, it's kind of like I tend to be like the hopeless guy, right? It's like this is
it's a heretical thing.
Yeah, this is going to get fucked really fast if we don't do something. At the same time, if it does do that, I have to remember that not everything I have comes from external sources. Not everything I am is provided to me by government, by Christianity, by church, by Islam, by any religion, any government, any politic, any economic system. None of that comes in from anybody. It comes in from internal, and I have to find that thing that is within me so that I can give my life to it completely until my torch is gone.
Yeah.
And then I hand it on to my future generation, and that may be the Duke, and it may not be the Duke. The Duke may find his own purpose that has nothing to do with mine, and that's okay. But maybe there's someone who I am in contact with who is the next generation that I hand that to. So the hope is not, that's my problem. I don't know that our generation is going to get it. I think the Dukes will.
Oh, definitely.
I think that we have to just be a voice in the wilderness, saying, look, here it comes. There is hope. May not be today. We've got to prepare for the pain that is today.
Yeah.
And in doing so, we have to sacrifice. Why do you think I'm trying to get myself into physical shape? My body into physical shape? It's because I think that we're going to go through some really tough times in the future, and I've got to be in the best physical shape that I can so that I can make it through.
Not only physical, but there has to be a spiritual aspect to that. Well, there has to be a balance.
Yes, I agree, but my spirituality has influenced my physicality. So that's I mean, a year ago I weighed 240. As of today, I'm at 201.
Nice.
And so you're looking at, that's purely because of the awakening. And it's funny because I know that this meat suit is going to go away, and it's really kind of hindering me from being the greatest spirituality that I can. But it's what I use to convey my body or my soul or my spirit through this life. So it's not as important as what you think it is or what you have believed it to be. At the same time, if I'm using this body to experience and to ascend as a soul, shouldn't I try to make this body last as long as it fucking can?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's just where it is. And so my suffering may last forever, but will I ascend to a higher level because I've allowed it to last for so long? I mean, those are the questions that I ask myself every day. And that's kind of the reason why I've changed where I am is this experience that we will experience, whether we go into lockdowns and financial ruin or not, matters not. What matters is that I experience it in the best way and understand that even in the darkness, the light shines. I can be the torch Now, my torch may be like, this is fucked, but let's not let this do this again. And here's how we plan. And this is how we prepare for the future. This is how we make sure it doesn't happen. This is how we make sure the boomers never do this to us again.
Correct.
You know, and we pass along to Duke, who's Generation Z, I believe, to his generation and hope that his generation becomes the greatest generation.
The new greatest generation.
Yeah, without war. Mm-hmm. Let's see if we can do it without war, without violence.
Yeah.
And let's see if we can change, because it's going to be, and I'm talking physical, but I don't think you can get there without spirituality.
Correct.
And I don't think you can be spiritual if you're tied into a specific religion.
Correct.
I think you have to understand that the spark of God, the spark of divinity, we've said that time and time again, is within you, and you have to figure out what that looks like for you specifically. And I know that's flipping some Christians and some Muslims and other folks off, because, you know, they would rather control that narrative. But the fact is that we as humans are the most powerful when we are the most spiritual, and when we are living the purpose that we have been called to live. And when we're in the community to live within which we live. But we have to shed this, I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean you can't debate and have conversations and all that stuff. But
that's part of
growth.
Conversation, tabletop debates, a sharing of ideas is how we grow. It's how we weed out our knowledge garden. Remember, a couple episodes ago, we talked about how most people look at knowledge as a piece of paper that we file away, and then it's ego-based, right? Because I have knowledge stored away, right? And how I explained that knowledge is a seed that is planted, and it grows. But when you have a spiritual knowledge, when you have a knowledge-based garden, right? It's a garden. It's beautiful, and its roots sink down. Right, and you have a beautiful library. Most people use a library. I'm starting to look at knowledge as a garden. You're going to have cross-pollination. In order to grow spiritually, and in order to grow effectively, and have a beautiful garden, you're going to have cross-pollination of all of this philosophy, all of this spiritual knowledge, and it's going to be in one garden. It's going to be a network of roots. And there's going to be a sharing and a trading and a transitioning of knowledge within the root base, right? So yes, in order to move forward, there has to be spiritual knowledge.
All right, now I'm going to bring it back around.
Bring it to rescue us, bro. Rescue us. Before you do that, the philosophies and ideas that you've been chatting about tribal and spiritual practice and physical practice, reminds me of the author we used to read, Jack Donovan.
Mm-hmm.
He had a lot of that same philosophy. Great author, by the way.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Bring it around.
So I'm going to bring it around. So I'm going to bring it around and say this. I think heathenry is the answer.
I agree with that.
Because heathenry brings you closer to the land.
Yes.
And while you may not hug a tree, you certainly worship brother tree.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you certainly take care of your land. You take care of the things that are the closest to you, and that's where you put your hands in the soil, your feet on the ground. I mean, you start looking. So if I'm really going down that path of heathenry, or even if we want to take heathenry off the table as far as a label and just call it taking care of the land, you know, then you become like, I think it was the Native Americans that said, "This is not my land. I borrow this from those who come behind me."
Up next on Rettals Pub.
Well, Russell Means, that's funny that you bring that up. Me and you chatted briefly this week about Russell Means. Russell Means was a great influence on my, I don't know what to call it, just the spiritual aspect of land, right? Is that earth is alive. It is in and of itself a living, breathing being. And therefore we would not pollute, or we should not pollute our neighbor, right? We should not spit on our neighbor. We should not pour oil on our neighbor. We should not pollute our neighbor, right? Then why do we feel confident? If that's a moral objective, to harm my neighbor, then why is it not an objective Why are we harming the organism on which gives us life and sustenance?